Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Authentic Podcast with Justin Doulard. And thank you for tuning in to another episode. And now, this is the moment you've all been waiting for. Another genuine conversation with a unique individual. It's time!
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Authentic Podcast. I got Mr. Smiling Sam Alvey with me, a current light heavyweight fighter in the UFC. This man's got over 40 professional fights, 20 of them in the UFC. Sam, thank you for joining me, sir. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, sir. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. So, I guess we'll start off by this. My wife actually stumbled across your profile because we've seen you fight a couple of times, but she was the one who found your Instagram, and your profile just kind of caught my eye. It said, anyone who asks for a podcast interview, you did it. So I have to ask you first off, why do you do that? And thank you for doing it as well. So.
Oh yeah, well, there's a couple of reasons. One, I wouldn't have a job if it wasn't for people that liked watching me fight. And I found the more I can talk to people, the more they like to watch me fight, and the more I can give back, even if it's just a little bit, going on a podcast. And two, there's going to come a time in my life when nobody wants to interview me. It's going to come a time when I'm just going to be some other guy sitting on the couch yelling at the TV. So I'm going to get every second I can out of this. I'm going to take full advantage of my career, and that people like to talk to me.
That's good stuff, man. Well, like I said, I appreciate it. And, I like that. So you seem like a charismatic guy and someone who, obviously respects the sport and the fans. So that's neat. I did listen to a couple of your shows that you did just to kind of learn a little more about you and kind of see what other people were asking you. And I took some notes, and the first thing I wanted to ask you, it was Fourth and Long, the show you did. And you talked about, how the judges are kind of poor in the UFC, and that's a pretty common topic. And kind of play into that question. Your last fight was a draw, which, just as a sports fan, I think draws are ridiculous. I think there should be some type of overtime or something, whatever that may be, which could be hard in the fight world. But talk a little bit about your draw and kind of the bad judging.
Yeah, judging, it's just atrocious. At this point, going into a decision, nobody has any idea what they're going to expect. Nobody has any idea what the judges are going to say, because the judges seem to just make it up as they go. As far as my draw, going into the decision, I knew I had won. I knew I had won the first two rounds pretty solidly, and I lost the third round, but it was competitive. It wasn't a blowout like one of the judges said it was. And it's going to tarnish what the sport is. I mean, it has in boxing. Boxing's a joke. Most people say, oh, the judging's terrible. The judging, the judges get paid off. They don't know what they're doing. And UFC I don't think they're getting paid off, but I don't think they know what they're doing. I don't think they know. And I don't know if it's their fault or if the judging criteria is so vague or so strict maybe that they can't use their own common sense to decide who wins a fight or who wins a round. That they start overthinking it. The way it's explained to us is every round is judged by itself. What happens in round one has no influence over what happens in round two. But now they're saying you'll get a 10-8 if round three is more dominant than round one is. So then you have to go back and rescore stuff. It's kind of embarrassing that the judges can get it wrong so often.
Where you say they say this, they say that. Who's telling you this, and where do you learn that?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't remember at this point. I've been told by so many different people, so many different places. I'm sure it has happened at my fight. I'm sure it's been at other amateur fights. It's been at professional fights that I had nothing to do with. It's one of the things you hear a little bit from everywhere, from everyone. I was actually scoring a fight with a bunch of UFC current UFC fighters and past UFC fighters, where the scoring senate it was called, and it's where that an outside source pays for us to watch the card, and then we just judge it and put everything on Twitter. And it was really fun, and I got to do it with Frank Trigg, who was a UFC fighter and is currently a UFC referee. And he was going over what a 10-8 is. And I'd argue with anyone that 10-8 should never be, or should almost never be in a UFC fight. But he was explaining what the criteria was. And what the criteria he explained was different from how my fight was judged. So whatever this criteria is, it changes from person to person.
I know there's no quick answer or no quick fix, and I think on 4th and Long you kind of talked about it. But what can the UFC do to improve on judges?
One, I like the idea of being able to fire judges. As far as I can tell, no judge can be fired right now. It's a government job, is what it is, and they're usually pretty safe. But I've heard another idea, and who was it? Somebody told me, but they heard it from Joe Rogan. And I just love the idea. And it's just hire more judges. Right now they have 3 judges to judge a fight. Hire 15 or 8 or 10. Just hire a bunch of judges and take the majority to get the win. Oh, the scoring senate we did, there was about 13 or 14 of us. And every fight, we all kind of got roughly the same answers. But every now and then there'd be a fight where 10 of us would say the first person won. 2 of us would say the second person won. And then one person say it was a draw. But you go with the majority draws. The majority of the people saw it one way. And I think it'd be much more difficult to have, even 5 people screw up a fight card as opposed over 3.
So question with that, some of John Jones's fights have been pretty controversial. Of course, he was the champion when he fought them. And, they say you got to take the champion down to beat the champ or to get the belt. But some of his fights were arguably, a lot of people think he lost some of those to
Dom Reyes. He definitely lost to.
Dom Reyes.
Thiago Santos. That was a close fight, you could argue. Gustafsson, number 1. I thought Gustafsson won. You go down the list. He's got a lot of very unpopular decision victories. And it's unfortunate. If the judging was better or more reliable, you'd really be more sure that the champion is the champion.
Do you think live scoring would help at all, or do you think that's just kind of like a small step, but nothing, no major change really?
I don't know yet. I'd have to see more fights. I've seen one LFA that does live scoring. I think they're in Kansas or Oklahoma. One of the two does live scoring. And it was fun to see. I don't know if it affects – I don't know yet. You're told at the end of the round, so there's very little time that you get to process if you won or lost. So I would like to see more. I'd like to see it play out a little bit more.
Do you ever go back and watch the tape? And, because a lot of fighters – I feel like they have this mentality, you're live, you're in it. You're like, I think I won that fight. Even, you ever go back and you're like, okay, maybe I didn't win. I just thought I had it and I go back in there, or you pretty much always, once you think you won it, it's hard to change your mind.
I don't think I've ever changed my mind going back, thinking I've won, going back and saying I've lost, or thinking I've lost and gone back and watched and think I've won. How am I saying? So try 2 fights ago, I fought Ryan Spann in the octagon. I thought, you know what, that was a close fight. That was, man, a split decision loss. That was close. Then I went back and watched it, and I thought, wow, I won this fight. So I've gone that way. I've gone from not really being sure, maybe thinking I lost, to going back and saying, wow, maybe I did win that fight. But I don't think I've ever gone from, I won that fight, to going back and watching thinking, maybe not.
So your last fight was in Abu Dhabi. You talked a little bit about that on 4th and Long. Was just going to ask you, do you got any current fights for 2021, or you got anybody in mind, anything in the works?
I've got nothing in the works, but I've got 2 people I'd love to fight. One is Jack Marshman. He's coming off a little bit of a skid like I am. I'm going back down to middleweight, so I'll meet him in middleweight, and we could have just a hell of a fight together. Then there's another guy who's kind of sort of a buddy of mine, and I've always said I like fighting my friends. Mike Perry. I think I've heard rumor that he's going up to 85, and I'm going down to 85, and he's coming off 2-fight loss. I'm coming off coming off a draw. So I think that would be another fun fight. And I think both of those fights would be. I think I'd win them both, but I think the fans would win the most.
So you'd go down to 185, and Mike Perry would go up to 185.
Yeah, I think because he missed weight by 5 pounds his last fight, and I heard him say that he's going to go up, but that doesn't mean he's going to go up. So if he's going up, I would love to welcome him to the division. Otherwise, Jack Marshman, he's a stud. I wanted to fight him a bunch of years ago. It just didn't work out that way, and I think now might be a good time.
So I feel like a lot of today. So I've only been a fan, follow the UFC for about 4 years. So I'm still newer per se, maybe three good ones. But it seems like nowadays a lot of the fights they get made on Twitter or Instagram or at a press conference. But you're more of a respectful guy, more of a martial artist, and not much of a trash talker and whatnot. So how do your matches get made? How does a match get made for someone who's not out talking shit all the time?
So I'm one of the guys, after a fight, when I win, and it's been a minute since I've had the opportunity, but they give you a microphone. And everybody always wastes that opportunity thanking the people they love and thanking my team and thanking this. When I get that microphone, I call out who I want. I do something to make someone remember me. I think I was in Florida, and I started to say, your oranges are fantastic. Whatever comes to mind, I spend every second on that microphone trying to get people to remember me, to like me, to get something I want. And so I've had quite a few fights work out that way, where I'll get that microphone, call out the guy I want to fight, and then get them the next one. Now I haven't had that microphone in a minute, so it's going to get a little more up to the UFC as to who I fight. But whoever they offer me, I've never said no. So I think that they'll offer me someone, and I'll accept.
You fought in Florida, one of the first cards that was during quarantine. Is that correct? With no fans?
I was the first fight of the new world. All sports closed down.
You were the first one?
I was the first fight. In over 70 fights, I've never been the first fight on a card. And so I was the first fight on that card. And I like to say I opened up the world's economy.
Okay, I thought so because I remember things about people in random different ways, And I remember watching that fight, and the way I remembered you is, you were coming out of the arena and there's 0 fans, and you were like waving to the stadium and nobody was there. You were just cheesing and smiling, fake waving at the crowd. And I will always remember that.
Yeah, no, that was me. And it was funny, as years and years ago when I was out in Mandalay Bay where there was nobody around. And so I did the same thing then too, and I got a good response out of that as well. So I've actually gotten to do it with people. People remember that.
That's awesome. You did ask some friends some questions, so I'm going to kind of pop those in here if you don't mind. Just so we can get those. You fought in 4 or 5 professional promotions. And, UFC is kind of the pinnacle of those, but you got a lot of big name fighters who are, they say testing free agency, and they're leaving and going to other promotions like, Bare Knuckle, Bellator, PFL. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that is a viable option, or do you think UFC is the pinnacle? And
by far, the UFC is the pinnacle. There's not even really a close second. It is where the best in the world go. However, I love the PFL. I love what Bellator is doing. They're trying their best to challenge the UFC, which is raising our pay, which is raising the pay across the board. The PFL is now, they've got $1 million tournament. They've got if you win, I think it's 3 fights or 4 fights, you win $1 million. And that's unheard of outside of championship, Conor McGregor type fights in the UFC. So that's huge. So I could see some UFC fighters going to the PFL just because they have the opportunity to win $1 million, where they'd have to win 7 fights in the UFC to get to $1 million. Bellator, they're I say stealing. They're acquiring some great talent, some really enjoyable talent, and it's a ton of fun watching them. The UFC guys move over there, and vice versa. I like it when Bellator moves to UFC too. But that the free market of competition is just really increasing the wages of everyone. ONE FC's in the conversation too. They've got arguably the greatest 125er to ever live in Mighty Mouse. It's a wonderful world of fighting that we're in right now.
Yeah, good stuff. Kind of follow-up question with that. How does one get on the UFC roster? What do you got to do to get there? And then for a guy like you, how have you stayed so long? I mean, 20 fights in and still going. So, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. How I got on it, they always say there's 2 things you have to do to get into the UFC. You have to win and you have to finish. If you can do those 2 things, the UFC will look at you. And I always had a good time doing that. I won a lot of fights. I think I was 21 wins and 3 or 4 losses when I finally got in. So I had a lot of them. And then I had a lot of finishes. I'm just about to get my 20th knockout, and I've got 3 or 4 submissions, and I've got some pretty dominant performances in there. So those are the 2 big ones. As far as staying, I've got entertaining fights. I every now and then, the Elias Theodorou one pops out where I'll have just a boring fight, but everyone does. Most of my fights are entertaining, but then I do go that extra way. Like you were saying, you remember me waving to fans that weren't there. That's something people like that. And I love it too. It's goofy. It's who I am, but people remember that, that there are some fighters in the UFC that have close to as many fights as me, but are not as memorable. Just, I'm a big kind of chubby ginger redhead who smiles a lot. I stand out a bit. I think that's helped.
How long do you think you plan on staying in the UFC? Like, if it was up to you, you got 3 more years, 4 more years.
If it's up to me, I'll have 10 more years in the UFC.
10?
I'm my head coach, Dan Henderson, fought in the UFC till he was 45, I believe, or 44. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to be 45 in a day. I would let that. That's when I'd like to retire. I love what I do. I love who I do it with. And it pays well. I get to. I always say that the best thing about being a fighter is I never have to wear shoes. I am barefoot 98% of the day, every day.
Yeah, I remember hearing that on, I think, the Fourth and Long show when you said, no shoes at the house, then you'll put on some slides to get to the gym and just take them right off. So,
yeah, I've got slippers that I wear from my door to the truck, and then I take them off as I drive, and then I take them from the truck to the gym, and then I take them off when I'm in the gym. And it's just the greatest freedom in the world that I can do that. And the older I get, the more I realize that there aren't many of us that can do that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So you seem to appreciate the sport and fighting and being able to do it for a profession. What would you say is the greatest lesson that you have learned from fighting? This was another question I had.
Ooh, the greatest lesson that I've learned from fighting. The fans only like you as much as your last fight. So that they'll turn on you quick. You'll get the diehard ones that love you from the beginning, and they do, but you'll go from, oh my God, you're great, Sam, to, oh my God, you're the worst thing that's ever been, real quick. And it's as long as they're talking about you, it's good. So, there's no bad news, or what's the saying? Any news is good news. And it's, as long as they're talking about you, it's great. But the sport is really a lot of fans will love you as you're winning.
Yeah, they always have that famous quote. So, what have you done for me lately?
Yes,
in the sport. Yeah. So
that's it.
Let's see. Okay, got a big one coming up for the light heavyweight belt. Izzy versus Jan. You got any predictions on that?
Yeah, I'm taking Izzy. Normally, I would have taken Jones if it was still Jones, but I'm going to take Izzy. Jan is great. He's very talented. He hits really hard, and he's bigger than Izzy, but he's kind of slow. He kind of tires out in the later rounds. His striking is a little a little predictable. And Izzy's fast. He's not. I don't think he's as fast as Anderson Silva was, but he's quicker than most of the roster is right now. And I think he's gonna. I think he's gonna find his shots and beat. Maybe even finish in the later rounds.
Did his performance against Paulo Costa surprise you, or did you see that one coming?
His performance didn't, but Paulo Costa, his performance surprised me. All these guys, you have Romero followed by Acosta, that are just world beaters. And then they come out and they stand it and stare at him. So, well, you're going to get beat if you stand and stare at him. It was the second round he was finished in, or the third round. I spent the whole fight trying to figure out what Costa's plan was, and I still don't know what his plan was.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously easy for me to say as I'm, a couch quarterback here, but I thought it was disappointing as well in Costa and Yoel Romero because, like you said, they just, they look like Tarzan, but, they kind of showed up like Jane against Izzy. So,
yeah, it was really a weird fight.
Let's see. Would you say, so you've been in 20 fights UFC, over 40 professional. Was it over 40 or 49 professional fights? Gosh,
what am I, 33, 14, and 3? Whatever that is. And then I've got 7 professional Muay Thai fights as well.
Oh, okay. So, a lot. Would you say your training regimen is the physical part of it harder or the mental part of it harder?
The physical part's far harder. I might be rare in that I never had that physical thing with me with fighting. For me, it was always just a fight. I didn't mean to be a fighter. I meant to go out there and have a good time, and then they just kept paying me, and then the UFC's in there paying me. It was always just a good time for me. It's still a great time. I love doing it, so I never get nervous before a fight. I never get the jitters. I never really get any of that. I just kind of go out there and perform like I know I can. The older I get, it's definitely harder to get my 2 or 3 workouts a day in. I still get them in there, but it's, as I get older, it's more difficult to stay in the gym as much as I do.
What are if you have any pre-fight rituals that are kind of like your musts?
I always say a prayer with my team and whoever else is in the locker room. When I was in South Dakota, every fight I always ask, hey, anyone in the locker room, I'm going to say prayer, team prayer. Y'all are welcome to it. Sometimes I'll get some guys, sometimes I won't. It's always a good time. In South Dakota, I'll bet you I had 35 people in this prayer circle with me. Just everyone from every locker room came in circle. I was like, ooh. I was more nervous about saying a good prayer than I was for there's a lot of people into this. So that's always a big one. I always stretch out with my wife. I always warm up my body with her. Stretching me and, a little gentle massage there. And that's really about it. I'll hit some mitts. I'll kind of just break a light sweat and just enjoy the moment while I'm back there.
And that's awesome. That's good stuff. And you said, correct me if I misunderstood, but you hadn't even watched mixed martial arts and then you turned it on and then you said, I want to do this. Is that kind of how you came in?
No, not quite. I'd never watched mixed martial arts and then I started doing it. And it was probably 2 or 3 years of doing it before I started watching it.
Okay. So you were doing it, but you didn't watch.
Yeah, I was probably 6-1 or 7-1 as a professional before I ever knew the UFC was a thing. So that would have been 11 or 12 fights between amateur and pro that I had done before I knew the UFC was even out there. I just did it. I really just enjoyed doing it. It was fun to do. I got to work out, got to practice. And then I got to make a couple $100 to fight.
So when you initially joined and did it, you weren't intending to make it as a career, or you did see it as a career from day one?
No, I had no intention of doing it as a career. I was just a redneck Polak from Wisconsin. I just thought I was tough, and I was a band nerd growing up. I never did taekwondo, or I kind of wrestled a little bit. I never did karate, never watched boxing. To this day, I've only seen 2 boxing fights. Both of them were Mayweather. Yeah, versus Mayweather versus Conor, and who's the other one Mayweather fought? That it might just be that one. So I never grew up with the fighting realm. and I just enjoyed doing it. Kind of made it up as I went, and then eventually the paychecks started getting a little bigger, just big enough for me not to need a real job, and I eventually learned about the UFC and then said, let's do that. It was my wife and I said, yeah, let's do that. I'll get in the UFC and we'll make a living that way. I said, oh, okay. And then it worked out eventually. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears later, but I got there.
That's great stuff, man. I know you, I follow your Instagram, obviously, and you were talking about the Jake Paul stuff earlier. Well, a couple of weeks ago. Do you think, how do you think he would fare against Conor McGregor? Because he's calling him out currently, whether it happens or not. But
yeah, he'd get slept immediately. As fast as Conor wanted to end it, Conor would end it. Even though there's a big size difference, Jake is significantly bigger than Conor. I don't think it would be difficult for Conor to finish him in the first round if he wanted to.
What do you think, or who do you think is going to win out of the rematch, Dustin Poirier versus Conor?
Oh, come on. If you asked me a year ago, I would have said Poirier. But now that it's coming up, Poirier lost his title, and when people lose their titles, they tend to lose. Conor has been gone; he hasn't had a title in a while, so I'm kind of leaning towards Conor this time.
And that's over in Abu Dhabi. Did you enjoy your time in Abu Dhabi? I know you kind of said that you're in quarantine, so you didn't get to do a lot, but
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a beautiful place. It was a beautiful beach. The UFC spared no expense making us as comfortable as possible. And it really was a good time over there.
How was that flight, man? What was it, 14, 15 hours?
Yeah, but the UFC put us up first class. So we got to lay down, stretch out, watch TV. It was really comfortable for me. Not so comfortable for my corners who are stuck in coach, but
yeah, I've taken I think the longest flight I took was 13 hours from Georgia to Ireland, and that's brutal. I was in coach too, so I was like your corners. So let's see. Okay.
A couple flights to New Zealand and Australia, so I've had a couple long flights where I was flying coach, and I may never go back. First class is something else.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. Okay, another couple of good questions. You can fight anyone from history. Who is it and why? It's kind of I don't know if you're a Fight Club guy. It sounds like a Fight Club question.
Yeah. Who would it be? I always wanted to fight Michael Bisping. It's recent history. I was always an admirer of his fighting style. He and I are completely different, but I've always wanted to fight him. And then he retired. He retired after his title run. But I would have liked to have fought him.
Man, I love Michael Bisping. He is so funny. Cracks me up.
Oh, he's just wonderful. So,
how is your cut to from light heavyweight to 185? Is that pretty tough on you, or?
Yeah, I walk around 220, 230, somewhere in there. During camp, I'll diet back down. Then the week of, it's usually between 15 and 20 pounds. The final cut, I try and keep it under 10 pounds, but it always sucks. It's always rough.
So you cut down, and you're going to go back to 185. That's correct.
Yeah, can't win a damn fight at 205. I gotta do something.
What do you think has been? You said you're kind of on a skid. I think it was 4, and then you had the draw, or maybe a win, but they gave you a draw, the bad judges. So, have you changed anything up, or was
the big thing I'm going to change is I'm going to go back down to 185. I don't know what I have to do to win. I won this last fight, and the best they could do is give me a draw. What I think the incompetence of the judges might have the guys I'm fighting are bigger than me, so they say, well, that guy's bigger, he probably won. And I'm gonna try. I need to win my next fight. I need to, if I want to have any career left with the UFC. I need to win it. And so that's the plan. Is I'm gonna drop back down. I'm gonna win my fight, and then keep going at 85.
Who's your dream matchup? Whether it be 205, 185, it's like, hey Sam, you got one last fight in you. You can pick anybody on the roster. Who's it going to be?
I'd say whoever the champion is. Give me a title shot. That'll be the dream. I don't care who it is that has the title, but get me in that title fight. I'm the most dangerous man in the world if you give me 5 rounds.
I like it. Who would you say has hit you the hardest in your career?
Dan Henderson.
The coach?
There's not a close second.
That's awesome. Uh, a lot of these are cliche questions, but I did post and had people ask, but would you rather have a face pinch or a leg kick?
Would I rather punched in the face or kicked in the leg?
Which is worse, a punch in the face or a good leg kick?
Punch in the face is worse. Nothing really hurts till the next day, but the face punch will take you out right then. It'll drop you.
Hey, I meant to ask you, I saw that video you put on your Instagram about a day or two ago where you cracked your jawline right by the tooth.
Yeah.
That was practice?
Yeah, that was Sean and I. We weren't even going all that hard. He just threw like a little teep kick, and it just kind of hit me. Didn't hurt at all. Just nothing. I went and I sat on the – it's like, I waved him off. Immediately I knew what happened. I went and sat down. I took my mouth guard out. So I went to the bathroom. Sean at the time, are you okay? What? I didn't mean – I said, no, I'm fine. So I went to the bathroom. I took the mouth guard out. I spit out just a bunch of blood. You could see my cheeks would just split. It's like, So I yelled out, Britt, we have to go to the doctor. We went to a dentist, and they took an X-ray and said, yeah, it's broken. He said, we got to wire it shut. I said, oh, okay. And so we wired it shut, and that was that.
How long does it take to recover from something like that? Because that wasn't recently, right? That was quite a while back.
5 years ago from yesterday or 2 days ago. So it was over 5 years ago now. My mouth was wired shut for 6 weeks, and it was just a miserable 6 weeks. And then after that, it was they said it takes a year for it to be recovered 99%. And so it was, I think I fought 4 or 5 months later against Elias Theodorou, but it was just miserable.
Wow.
I got so fat and thin at the same time. It was stupid because you need to get the calories in because you're always hungry, but you can't eat anything. So it's all kind of soup or ice cream.
Yeah, that's rough, man. Good question here. Would you ever consider going to the WWE if it made you more or quite a bit more money than the UFC?
I would go to the WWE if I made less money.
Nice.
That would be my dream. That's what got me into fighting to begin with. I never watched fighting, but I loved the WWE. Loved it. Oh, man, that's what got me working out in the beginning. I used to do push-ups during the commercial break, and I could do 5 push-ups, and then I could do 7 push-ups, then I could do 20 push-ups, then I could do 150 push-ups, and it was just push-ups, and I did it in the commercial breaks. My buddies and I, we all wrestled in the backyard, and we just had so much fun at that. I would. It is a dream of mine to make it to WWE.
Are you going to try and reach out to him? I mean, you tried out for American Idol, so
not American Idol. The Voice.
The Voice. My bad.
I will reach out to him. I got to win a fight again first.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, good luck, man. That's I didn't know you were such a big fan. That's a good question. I'm glad that got asked. So, I think this is the last one I had. Who is a woman you would not want to fight?
Cyborg.
Oh, yeah, good answer.
Oh my goodness. It's either Cyborg or my wife. I'd lose to both of them. Yeah. That's
good stuff. Let me see. And I did want to touch on that. The Voice, I saw you said you're a big 90s country fan, and you sang some Garth Brooks on The Voice. Were you being serious with that, or was that just kind of a fun bucket list?
Oh, no, I tried out. I think this is the second time. I am great at karaoke.
Oh, you really?
I'm nowhere near good enough to be a professional singer, but I've got the UFC behind my name. Sometimes that's enough to get you on the door, get me on TV.
So you're going to give it another try?
Every chance I can try out. You know what? I've tried out 3 times actually. I went 1 time in person and then 2 times over the internet. And all 3 times they said, nope, not today. So no, okay, maybe tomorrow. Are
you an American Idol fan, or have you ever watched American Idol? Or?
I loved American Idol. I was crazy about it growing up. My mom and I, we'd always watch it. And I haven't watched it in a few years, but we used to watch it just religiously.
Do you know Carrie Underwood?
No, I don't know. I know of her.
Well, know of her. Yeah, she went to my college. So,
Oh yeah,
yeah, she's like
younger
she's
or older. Yeah.
a little bit older.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm 30. I think she's probably like 35, 36, maybe a little older, but 5 to 6 years older. But yeah, I'm from a small town in Oklahoma, and she's also from a small town about 30 minutes away. So
Okay. Oh, that's cool.
yeah, I vaguely remember her, living in my hometown, and when she tried out for that, and then obviously, blew up to what she is now. So
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. She's about the greatest female singer of all times.
yeah, my wife is a huge fan, so we've been to her concert, and yeah, big fan. But um, got one or two more questions. I'll let you go. I appreciate your time. We're about up, but I did want to touch on kind of your family history and what you're doing with being a foster parent and just a dad in general, because I noticed you said that was a big part of your life. Maybe how you got into that or why you're so passionate about being a foster parent.
Yeah. Well, so I've been a foster parent now for one kid, and we're within a month of adopting her, and it has been an incredibly difficult journey getting here. But we're here, and I couldn't be happier. I've had this beautiful little. This is the thing. I can't say much about my foster child because I signed a bunch of. They say it's not my story to tell. It's the child's. But you'll see photos. We'll put photos of her online, and we'll always have a little sticker over her face or something like that because we're not allowed to show photos of her until she's legally in Alvey, which should be about this time next month. And it was just an amazing thing that we got into. We were trying to adopt a child from Africa, and we got about $20,000 deep into that, and then it didn't happen, and we weren't. Yeah, I think the government shut it down, or the little girl we were trying to adopt wasn't actually adoptable. It was not quite a scam, but we didn't get any of our money back. Yeah. But while we were doing that, a little girl from down the street who was a foster family was being taken from her. I can't say a lot about stuff. She was being moved, and she was kind of friends with my older little ones, and she the day she was leaving, she said, "Oh, you should adopt me. You could," and it just broke our heart. And says, "Well, we're this far into adoption. Why don't we switch focus to foster, and maybe little person from up the street can come closer into her home again." And so we got into foster, and it was 5 or 6 months of classes and learning and this and that about the foster system. And as soon as we got licensed to foster, the first little one to get dropped off was our little one, and we've had her for her whole life, and we're about less than a month away from her making her an official legal Alvey.
That's great, man. Yeah, I totally get the gist of it and the due process of adoption because it's really important, and you don't want to just do that handoff to anybody who fills out an application. But I don't think you should have to pay $20,000, much less pay $20,000 and then it not go through. I think that is discouraging for a lot of people. I feel like if it was as less of a financial burden, we may have some more people adopting. But I guess
it was partially because we were going through Ghana. Is the country we're trying to do. And we got into it, and then towards the end of it, the government of Ghana shut everything down. And there was like nothing we could do about it because it was the actual, I don't know, the king or president or parliament, whatever they have. They just shut it down. And so, well, damn.
Yeah,
I didn't know that was a possibility.
Yeah, I used to work with a woman many, many years ago, and I remember she and her husband adopted a brother and sister from somewhere overseas, and it took like 2.5 years. I mean, it was a long, grueling process. So
yeah,
they when they had met this family, they were like 6 months old, and by the time they got them, they were like almost 3 or something. It was crazy, but it's a neat stuff, man. It's a good thing you're doing, and I'm real fond of it. I think that's something I'd like to look into one day. So.
You should. That there are these kids, especially now with COVID and everything. The system is being forgotten about far more than it should be, and there are a lot of good kids that need a chance.
Yeah, I've always had a soft spot for that because I kind of grew up around it. My grandma used to foster kids a lot, and so I would play with those kids, and I didn't know at the time. I just thought they were friends of ours, but as I got
Yeah.
older, I understood. And then my mom is a social worker, so always kind of been familiar with the things like that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, man, that's great stuff. We about hit our time limit, and I got some good talk with you. I really appreciate it. If you want to drop any news or any of your websites or links for listeners to go to, you can, and we can wrap it up.
Yeah, well, I've got two websites. There's smileandsam.com and then there's smilemma.com. And if I've got some merchandise, some shirts and all that, y'all can look at. I've even got now masks with a big smile on it that you could look at. Otherwise, hit me up on my social media, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I love TikTok. And I'm at Smiling Sam on all those. I love talking to people. I respond to almost everyone.
I can't wait to tell my mom about your TikTok because she's obsessed with it. So hopefully you'll get to her.
Oh, I got into it like May. I just got a report. It's like May 9th or May 6th or something. It's the greatest thing. It is the greatest app that's ever been.
I love social media, but TikTok's just not one I've downloaded. But my mom sends me TikToks at least 2 or 3 times a week. So
it's like crack. You will be glued to it. Every time I stop somewhere, I go and I watch like 3 TikToks before I go.
That's awesome.
Get out of the car. Oh, it's just so addicting.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to tell my mom to follow you. So, well, hey, man, once again, I really, really appreciate having you on. It was a great chat. Going to continue to keep up with you and look for a new fight announcement and just follow you and hope you continue to be successful, man.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me on, sir.
Yeah, man. We'll talk to you soon and have a good one, man.
All right, you too. Have a great night. Have a happy New Year.
Thank you, sir. See you soon.
All right, bye.